Welcome back to my channel for another episode on medium format cameras, and it's been a while ago that I spoke about the Fuji GFX system. So here in front of me you see the Fuji GFX100 II, and mounted is the Fuji GF 55mm lens, widest open aperture is an f1.7, and this is an absolutely brilliant camera lens combo. So I want to talk about it, I want to show sample images, want to show to you that this camera lens combination is capable of a lot of things in a very special format, because on the medium format cameras, of course, we have a significantly larger sensor than, for instance, on a Leica SL3 or a Leica SL3S. And of course, I will tell you everything you need to know about this lens mounted on the GFX100 II. Let's kick this off. Before we go into the topic, a moment of housekeeping here. If you have not subscribed to my channel so far, but you enjoy my content, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, like and share my videos. I really want to grow this channel, but I need your help for this. So everything you do to help and support is highly appreciated. So let's have a look at this lens here. And first of all, it's a big lens. And the whole camera lens combination is also quite heavy. So you have quite something in your hand if you look at that. But the image quality will reward you in many ways for the weight and the size. So it's not a small piece of technology I have here in my hands. The GF lens is, like always in the Fuji system, a very sophisticated one. We have here an aperture ring with nice clicks. Listen to that. You hear that? Fantastic. Widest open aperture here is an f1.7, and you can stop this down all the way to an f22. Then we also have here a lock button, and the lock button is blocking currently that accidentally on the aperture ring I switch into the auto mode for the aperture selection, so the camera will select the aperture by itself and I cannot go into this auto mode here. But if I press it, I can unlock it, and now I'm here basically in a mode where the camera decides for the aperture. For instance, I can use this for shutter speed priority, and that's something I hardly use, but you know, there are applications of course where you can use it. And then there is a third mode here. Again, the ring is locked, see, I cannot move it, but if I press this lock button again, I can move it to C, and C stands for command dial. And then I can configure in the menu that instead of using the aperture ring to control and steer the aperture, I can use a command dial on the camera, for instance here, or for instance here, and in this way take control over the selection of my aperture for my shooting. And again, it's locked here. I have to press it again, then I go into the auto mode for aperture selection, and then I press it again, rotate it, and I get into the aperture ring with the beautiful clicks. That's the way it works. Widest open, as I said, f1.7, and on a sensor like the medium format sensor we have here in the Fuji GFX100 II, this creates of course a very shallow depth of field and is absolutely brilliant for people photography, in particular for portraits. The field of view generated by this GF55 Fuji lens on a medium format sensor with dimensions of 44 x 33mm is equivalent to a field of view of a 44mm lens on a 36 x 24mm, which is the full frame equivalence. And of course, this lens is complex. So if we look into the specifications, we have here 14 elements in 10 groups, which includes 2 aspherical elements and 2 ED elements. And ED stands for extra low dispersion, and that's an optical property which helps you to avoid chromatic aberrations. And I never had any issues with this lens when it comes to aberrations. It's really a fantastic lens when it comes to image quality. We have a minimum focusing distance of 0.5 meter and a maximum magnification of 0.17 times, so 17%. That means this lens on this camera can also be used for close-up shots. And the weight of the lens is 780 grams. As I said before, it appears heavy in the hand, but it sits perfectly in the hand. And I had no issues shooting this lens, carrying it around with me in New York and in Zurich, which is what the sample images will be all about. And I really love what comes out from this camera lens combination in terms of image quality. The Fuji GFX system is at this point in time the only medium format camera system that delivers fully fledged autofocus tracking. We don't have it in the Hasselblad X2D because yes, the Hasselblad X2D will recognize faces, and people, but it does not have continuous autofocus and it does not have autofocus tracking. Here we have it, and this camera lens combo delivers a pretty snappy and speedy autofocus. Let me quickly show that. So first of all, I have here on the function button face detection on or off. Now it's off, now it's on. And I have here tracking, wide tracking, and I can switch here on this button here from single autofocus to continuous autofocus. And if I look into that, and if I half press, first of all, even without half pressing the shutter button, you see that Jennifer's eyes are detected here. Look at that white square, which is over Jennifer's eyes now. And if I half press the shutter button, it will turn green, and I can actually focus and take the shot. Have a look here. It's immediately turning green, and the autofocus detects Jennifer's eyes. It's also tracking now. Look at that. If I move the camera here, it stays on Jennifer's face and eyes, and that is something we do not have in the Hasselblad X2D system, but we have it in the Fuji GFX system. And I really appreciate that, because for people, fashion, portraits, what have you, this is really helpful and gives you a better outcome in terms of shots than if you just would recognize the face but could not track it in a continuous autofocus mode. What I want to do now is going into sample images. I was shooting this lens in Zurich, I was shooting it in New York, and just walking down the streets, almost using it like a street photography camera. And I think the images will really show you what this camera lens combo is capable of delivering. And I can highly recommend this lens. There is really, besides the size, which is bulky, and the weight, which is heavy in combination with this large camera body, there's really nothing to criticize. It's an absolutely brilliant, fantastic lens, which I highly recommend. When it comes to sample images, let's start with a couple of frames I shot in Zurich, and then let's go to some pictures which I took by just walking down the streets in New York, Midtown. So here's Zurich, and you know, whenever I see footage from that camera, I'm blown away by the level of detail. These medium format 100 megapixel sensors, like in the Fuji GFX100 II or the Hasselblad X2D, they just deliver such incredible detail. It's absolutely amazing. Now, of course, photography is not about pixel peeping, but it gives you reserves if you want to crop into a particular part of the scene. Look here at the bridge, just amazing what level of detail you get here. And here these are images which are shot fairly well stopped down. This one here is at f11, for instance. Let's move on here to something else. So here we have an image shot at f4. And if you look at that, there's nothing to write home about the image, but what you see, how nice the transition is between sharp areas and fuzzy areas in the background. And again, it's pinpoint sharp, nothing to complain here. And look at this soft background fuzziness, very smooth. Here's some level of noise, ISO 2500, not hexed away with Lightroom this time, but generally a really good delivery what this camera gives you in terms of image quality and the option to separate foreground from the background. This lens can be shot widest open at f1.7. I show a portrait in a moment, which is even stopped down to f4, but you already see the nice separation of the foreground from the background. Here another image, again an incredible amount of detail. Whenever you see something here, a tiny little spot where I'm just with my magnifier tool now, and you crop in by 100%, you see this tiny little spot is a man leaning on a wall here. Absolutely amazing. I love that. Here another bridge in Zurich. Zurich is full of bridges, you know, and again, incredible amount of detail. Let's move on here. This is a portrait I shot. And you see, first of all, incredible resolution here, 11,648 times 8,736. This is more than most photo models, if you shoot a professional photo model, will like, because it unwheels everything on your skin. This was shot at 1/70 seconds at f4.0, so still stopped down, but look at the cars in the background. Look at these bokeh lights here. Absolutely fantastic how this lens is rendering light and separating the foreground from the background. And the level of details in the face, of course, is absolutely brilliant. And I think for portraits and people photography in general, this is an ideal focal length and is also an ideal widest open aperture with f1.7. And as I said, here I not even opened it widest. I just shot it at f4.0. Let's look at some images from New York City. As I said, I was walking down the streets. It was in fall last year, and I was shooting that lens and the Fuji GFX100 II. And first of all, here this image I wanted to show because the way the lights and the colors are carried across is very natural. That's exactly how I saw that scene. Look at that. Looks really nice. Here's a guy taking smartphone photos of a group of people, and the way this scene comes across in the image is really what I saw before with my naked eyes. Very nice. Here a guy sitting in the background doing whatever. Let's move on here. Architecture in NYC. Maybe here worthwhile to mention the angle of this lens is not really wide, right? 55 millimeter in the Fuji GFX system means that if you aim for buildings, you will typically get some falling lines. And if you correct them in post-processing, it will typically cut off part of the bottom of the image, which is exactly what you see here. So you don't see the street because it's cut off, because I corrected for falling lines. I nevertheless like these type of images. I think they are nice. Here is an image shot widest open at f1.7, one of these typical chimneys where God knows what comes out of the underground here in terms of smoke. And you see here how this scene is rendered. This guy here in the foreground is of course not sharp because we are taking the shot here with f1.7, but where the focus was sitting, it's pinpoint sharp. And the background behind that chimney is again fuzzy because we have a shallow depth of field here if we do not aim at infinity and focus at infinity. And that is so typical for this lens if you shoot it widest open. Here another image shot widest open f1.7, a group of police officers here protecting something. In the background, nice background bokeh here if you look into this area from the cars, from the lights of the cars, and it's really sharp where the focus is sitting. Look at this guy, he's kind of observing me and trying to figure out what I'm trying to do with my camera here. Quite interesting. More city lights, you know, walking down the street. So much to discover in NYC. Typical buses here. Very sharp where the focus was sitting in the background. Again, not sharp because I was shooting also this frame here with f1.7, widest open. Architecture, let's move on. Streets, getting close to Central Park. Famous Apple Store on 5th Avenue. People standing in front of the Apple Store. And again, a nicely rendered scene here with the typical traffic. Here architecture. This is the famous Plaza Hotel in New York, one of the most beautiful hotels in my opinion, although I'm not sleeping there. It's really expensive. And I think there's even a Hollywood movie playing there with Jennifer Lopez, and is a very nice hotel. But again, as in the first frame I showed, look at how these lights in a very warm atmosphere are projected onto the sensor by the lens. Really nice. I think this lens really has character. This lens has a soul, if I want to formulate it in this way. And whenever you shoot in low light, whenever you have lights like here in front of a hotel or somewhere else on the streets, it comes across in a very warm, very nice atmosphere. Very pleasant in my opinion. Let's move on. Central Park here. I think there was one image I wanted to show which I liked in particular. Here's squirrel, but that's already cropped in. But a nice squirrel here on a fence, typical scene in Central Park in New York. Here, this is a nice image. So here again, you see what I mentioned before. The bottom is cut off because I corrected that image for falling lines. But if you look at the image, it's actually quite nice. And it gives you all the details of this beautiful architecture of buildings, skyscrapers around Central Park. So I like that a lot. As I said, it was fall. Look at the beautifully colored trees here. And the big buildings surrounding Central Park. Let's move on. Here another image shot widest open at f1.7. Very nice bokeh. Look here at the lights and then move on to the horse where you see it's pinpoint sharp. I was aiming for the eye of the horse here. Look at the eyelashes. And generally, this lens, of course, has a fantastic capability to separate the foreground from the background. First of all, based on a focal length of 55 millimeter, which is give or take a normal focal length in a full frame equivalent setup, and then of course with the ability to shoot widest open at f1.7. Streets, traffic, and so on. I think I want to move on to the last frame and want to show you that because this is also an image I like a lot. Oh, by the way, this is an interesting one. So there is a hotel in Midtown where this sculpture is in the entry hall, and I like that a lot. Look at this sculpture here, this lady resting here with closed eyes, and look how sharp this image comes across at f1.7. This lens is built to be shot widest open, and wherever the focus is sitting at this part of the scene, it will be pinpoint sharp. Look at this image here. Here you see This is out of the focus range, but if you go to the eyes where I basically placed my focus using eye focus, this is pinpoint sharp. Very nice. Again, f1.7. Let's go to the last frame here. And here you see another picture of New York City streets. This is shot from a rooftop. And if you look into this building here on the right-hand side, it's amazing what level of detail this camera captures. It's almost a spy camera. Look at this guy sitting on his desk here. And there's another example I wanted to show. Let's see here, you see the interior of these images. Here's another guy in front of a computer. And you know, the resolution of this camera is so insanely high, and you could actually make it 4 times higher by going for the multi-shot option from 100 megapixel to 400 megapixel, that you probably can take the Fuji GFX as a tool for spying on people. Absolutely amazing. But what I really wanted to show are the street lights here with the cars. Look at that. Those small, tiny little people, which you hardly see from a distance, and then you zoom and crop into the scene, and you get so many details. And again, a very warm atmosphere from these street lights, from these car lights, and from a city which is about to experience the blue hour, as you can see here in the background on the sky. Very nice, and I think that's all the images I wanted to show. I can only tell you, this is a lens which is a must for every Fuji GFX shooter. And trust me, I'm not getting paid by Fuji. Not at all. I do not get any advantage for saying this, but I enjoy this lens so much that I thought now, a few months later after I took the shots, it's time to actually present it on my channel. Alright, that's it. There is nothing more to say and show. I hope you liked that video. If you liked it, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There is always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.